They said she was broken, worthless, a defective Omega who couldn't give her mate what he needed. So her mate rejected her in front of everyone, tearing their bond apart and leaving her to die of shame. But what she didn't know was that the most powerful alpha in existence was waiting in the shadows, and he didn't care about her flaws. He wanted her anyway. This is the story of how Freya went from rejected and ruined to becoming the Lunar Queen of the most powerful pack in the world. But before we begin, if you love stories about strong women rising from rejection and claiming their power, smash that like button right now and subscribe so you never miss an upload. And here's a question for you. If your mate rejected you, would you give them a second chance or move on to someone better? Drop your answer in the comments along with what country you're watching from. I love to see our pack expanding around the globe. Now, let's dive into Freya's story. Freya's knees slammed into the ceremonial platform as the mate bond tore apart inside her chest, a violent ripping sensation that felt like her heart was being clawed from her body. She couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The white silk of her mating dress pooled around her trembling body as 300 pack members watched her crumble. Xanthos stood above her, his face carved from stone, his hand still raised from where he'd just severed their bond with ancient words that echoed through the clearing like a death sentence. I, Xanthos Gonzalez, reject you, Freya Rivers, as my mate. The words kept repeating in her mind, over and over, each repetition a fresh knife wound. Her wolf howled inside her, a sound of such anguish that Freya thought she might die from it. She pressed her hands against the wooden planks beneath her, splinters digging into her palms as she tried to stand. Failed. Tried again. Pathetic, someone whispered from the crowd. Freya's enhanced hearing caught every word, every judgment. Did you see her face when the healer told Xanthos? She knew. She knew she was defective. Can't even give him pups. What kind of mate is that? Xanthos dodged a bullet. Better to find out now than waste years on her. Freya finally managed to push herself upright, her legs shaking so badly she had to lock her knees to stay standing. She lifted her eyes to Xanthos, searching his face for any trace of the boy who'd promised to love her forever. The boy who'd kissed her under the full moon when they were 15 and sworn they'd be together until their last breath. That boy was gone. In his place stood a stranger with cold amber eyes that looked through her like she was already a ghost. Xanthos, please, she whispered, hating the desperation in her voice but unable to stop it. Please, we can figure this out. There are treatments, magical healers in the Eastern Territories. There's nothing to figure out. His voice was flat, emotionless, and somehow that was worse than if he'd shouted. I need heirs, Freya. Strong heirs to carry on the Gonzalez bloodline. You can't give me that. Elder Thea confirmed it. Your womb is barren. You're useless to me. The word useless hit her like a physical blow. Freya staggered backward, and this time when her knees buckled, she didn't try to stand again. Around her, the pack began to disperse, whispers and pitying looks following them as they abandoned the failed ceremony. Some shook their heads. Others smiled with barely concealed satisfaction. Freya had always been well-liked, which meant she'd also collected her share of jealous enemies who were now delighting in her downfall. She caught sight of Daisy, her best friend since childhood, pushing through the crowd with tears streaming down her face. But before Daisy could reach her, Xanthos's mother, the former pack healer, stepped into her path. The older woman's face was composed, almost serene, as she placed a hand on Daisy's shoulder and said something that made Daisy stop in her tracks, her expression crumbling. Let her go, Xanthos's mother said, loud enough for Freya to hear. She needs to accept her place now. She's no longer the betas intended. She's just another Omega with nothing to offer. Freya didn't remember standing. Didn't remember running. But suddenly she was crashing through the forest, branches whipping against her face and arms as she fled deeper into the trees. Her wolf pushed strength into her limbs even as it whimpered with pain, and together they ran until the sounds of the pack faded behind them and all Freya could hear was her own ragged breathing and the thundering of her shattered heart. She ran for hours, or maybe minutes. Time had lost all meaning. When her legs finally gave out, she collapsed beside a crystal-clear stream, her reflection mocking her from the water's surface. She looked wild. Destroyed. Her carefully arranged hair had fallen loose, flowers from the mating crown scattered behind her like a trail of broken dreams. The intricate makeup Daisy had applied that morning was streaked with tears and dirt. But it was her eyes that made Freya turn away from her reflection. They looked hollow, empty, dead. How did this happen? She whispered to the uncaring forest. Yesterday, I had everything. Today, I have nothing. But she knew how it had happened. 3 days ago, she'd started feeling ill. Exhausted in a way that sleep couldn't fix. Dizzy spells that came out of nowhere. She'd gone to Elder Thea for a simple tonic, thinking maybe she was just nervous about the ceremony. The healer had run tests. More tests. And then yesterday, Elder Thea had pulled Xanthos aside with results that Freya hadn't even known existed. Medical records showing a rare condition, a twisted malformation of her reproductive system that meant she would never conceive. Never carry a child. Never give Xanthos the family he'd always dreamed of having. Freya pulled her knees to her chest and pressed her forehead against them, trying to make herself as small as possible. As if she could disappear entirely if she just compressed herself enough. Her wolf was silent now, retreating deep inside to lick its wounds in private. Even her animal half had abandoned her. I should have known, she said to the empty air. I should have seen the signs. The way he'd been distant lately. The way he looked at Mirrorstone at the last pack gathering. She's the Alpha's daughter. Strong bloodlines. Proven fertility. Everything I'm not. A twig snapped behind her. Freya's head jerked up, her wolf suddenly alert despite its pain. She wasn't alone. The scent hit her a second later, foreign and powerful, carrying notes of pine and midnight and something ancient that made her wolf whimper for an entirely different reason. This wasn't the pack members that had ridiculed her. This was something far more dangerous. You're trespassing, little wolf. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, deep and resonant enough to vibrate in Freya's bones. She scrambled to her feet, spinning toward the source, and found herself face to face with 6 wolves the size of horses. No, not wolves. Royal guards in wolf form, their eyes gleaming with predatory intelligence as they formed a semicircle around her. And behind them, still in human form while his guards remained shifted, stood a man who could only be one person. King Caspian Shadowcrest. The Alpha King himself. Freya's breath caught in her throat. She'd never seen him in person, only heard the stories. They said he was the most powerful werewolf alive, descended from the original bloodline that could trace its ancestry back to the moon goddess herself. They said he was cruel and cold, that he'd killed his own father to take the throne. They said he never smiled, never showed mercy, and chose his enemies' deaths with the same care other wolves chose their dinner. Looking at him now, Freya believed every story. He was tall, easily 6.5 feet, with shoulders broad enough to block out the setting sun behind him. His hair was black as a raven's wing, falling to his shoulders in thick waves that somehow looked both wild and deliberately styled. But it was his eyes that held her captive. Silver. Pure molten silver, like moonlight given form, and they were fixed on her with an intensity that made Freya want to bow her head in submission. She didn't bow. She'd already been brought low enough today. Chapter 2. I asked you a question, Caspian said, taking a step closer. His guards tensed, ready to attack at his slightest command. These are my private hunting grounds. No one enters without permission. So either you're suicidally brave, or you're running from something so terrible that you'd risk my wrath over whatever's behind you. Freya lifted her chin, something reckless stirring in her chest. What did she have to lose anymore? I didn't know where I was going. I was just running. And honestly, Your Majesty, whatever you plan to do to me can't be worse than what's already happened today. One of the guards growled, a low rumble of warning that said Freya had crossed a line by speaking to the king with such disrespect. But Caspian held up one hand, silencing the guard instantly. His silver eyes narrowed as he studied her, and Freya felt his power wash over her like a wave, searching, probing, cataloguing every detail about her. You carry the scent of a severed mate bond, he said, his voice softer now but no less commanding. Fresh. Still bleeding. The pain must be excruciating. Freya's hand unconsciously pressed against her chest where the phantom pain of the broken bond still throbbed. How did you? I'm the Alpha King. I can sense every wolf's bond within 100-mile radius. He moved closer, and Freya's wolf stirred with interest despite everything. There was something about him, something that called to her in a way that made no sense. Who was foolish enough to reject you? Does it matter? Freya tried to sound defiant, but her voice cracked. He made his choice. I wasn't good enough. I couldn't give him what he needed. Heirs. It wasn't a question. Caspian's lip curled with distaste. Let me guess. Some beta or young alpha who thinks his legacy depends on producing a litter of pups to carry on his precious bloodline. The accuracy of his assessment made Freya flinch. Xanthos Gonzalez. Beta of Crescent Moon Pack. And yes, he needs heirs. Strong ones. She stopped, the word catching in her throat like broken glass. I'm infertile. Defective. Useless. Is that what he called you? Caspian's voice had dropped to a dangerous growl. Useless. Among other things. Freya wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the warm evening air. But he wasn't wrong, was he? In our world, a female who can't produce young is worthless. I might as well be human for all the value I have to a pack now. Caspian was silent for a long moment, his silver eyes still fixed on her face with that unnerving intensity. Then he did something Freya didn't expect. He laughed. It was a short, bitter sound that held no humor, but it was a laugh nonetheless. Worthless, he repeated, shaking his head. The arrogance of young wolves never ceases to amaze me. Tell me something, little wolf. What's your name? Freya. Freya Rivers. Well, Freya Rivers, I'm going to share something with you that very few people know. He moved even closer, near enough now that she could see the faint scars on his neck, old wounds that must have been grievous to leave marks on a werewolf. I don't give a damn about heirs. I don't want them. I'll never have them. And I certainly don't judge a wolf's worth by their ability to breed like rabbits. Freya stared at him, confusion cutting through her misery. I don't understand. You're the Alpha King. Don't you need an heir to continue your line? My line can rot for all I care. The venom in his voice made Freya take a step back. Caspian noticed and sighed, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. I had a mate once. Years ago. She was pregnant with my child when a rival pack attacked. They killed her. Butchered her and my unborn son to hurt me, to weaken my claim to the throne. His jaw clenched, muscles jumping beneath his skin. So no, Freya Rivers, I have no interest in bringing more children into this world just so they can be used as weapons against me. I'm sorry, Freya whispered, genuine sympathy cutting through her own pain. That's horrible. It was a long time ago. But the rawness in his voice said otherwise. Caspian was silent for another moment, then he did something that shocked Freya to her core. He inhaled deeply, his eyes closing as he scented the air around her. When his eyes opened again, they were blazing with an intensity that made Freya's wolf sit up and take notice. Impossible, he breathed. What? What is it? You. Caspian moved faster than Freya could track, suddenly close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. You're my mate. Freya's world tilted sideways. No. No, that's impossible. Xanthos was my mate. I can't have another one. That's not how it works. It's rare, Caspian said, his voice rough with an emotion Freya couldn't identify. But it happens. The moon goddess sometimes grants second-chance mates to those who've been wronged. I never thought. He stopped, studying her with those piercing silver eyes. You feel it too, don't you? The pull. The recognition. Your wolf knows, even if you're too shocked to accept it yet. Freya wanted to deny it, but she couldn't. Because he was right. Despite the agony of her severed bond with Xanthos, despite everything that had happened today, there was something stirring inside her. A warmth. A sense of rightness that terrified her more than anything else that had happened. Her wolf was pressing against her consciousness, purring in a way it hadn't done even with Xanthos. This is insane, she said, shaking her head. I can't. I don't even know you. And you're the Alpha King. I'm just an Omega from a small pack. This doesn't make sense. Fate rarely makes sense. Caspian reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The simple touch sent electricity racing through Freya's body. But I learned long ago not to question the moon goddess's decisions. She's given us both a second chance. The question is, what do we do with it? I don't know what you mean. I need a queen, Freya. Caspian's hand dropped back to his side, but his eyes never left hers. I've been pressured for years to choose a mate, to produce an heir, to secure my bloodline. Every noble family in the kingdom has paraded their daughters before me like prized cattle. I've refused them all because I swore I'd never put another mate at risk. But you, he paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. You can't give me heirs even if I wanted them. Which means you're safe. No one can use unborn children against you. Against us. Freya's mind was reeling, trying to process what he was suggesting. You want to mate with me because I'm infertile? I want to mate with you because you're my true mate, Caspian corrected. The infertility is simply a practical advantage in a world where heirs are seen as political tools. But more than that, Freya Rivers, I want to mate with you because standing here talking to you is the first time in 10 years that I felt anything other than cold rage and duty. Freya's voice failed her. What was she supposed to say to that? This morning, she'd woken up thinking she'd be bonding with Xanthos by nightfall. Now Xanthos had destroyed her, and the most powerful werewolf in existence was telling her they were fated mates. It was too much. Too fast. Too impossible. I'm not asking you to decide right now, Caspian said, his voice gentler than she'd have thought possible from someone with his reputation. Chapter 3. But I am asking you to come with me. To my castle. Give yourself time to heal, to think clearly without the pain of rejection clouding everything. If you decide you want nothing to do with me, I'll have you escorted safely to any pack of your choosing. You have my word. Freya looked at him, really looked at him, searching for any sign of deception or ulterior motive. But all she saw was sincerity mixed with something that looked almost like hope. This man, this king who could have anyone and anything he wanted, was looking at her like she mattered. Like she was valuable. It was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. And if I say yes? She asked quietly. If I agree to be your queen, what would that mean? It would mean you'd stand beside me as an equal, Caspian said immediately. Not behind me, not beneath me. Beside me. You'd have power over the kingdom, authority to make changes you see fit. You'd never have to bow to anyone except by choice. And, he paused, his jaw tightening. And you'd be protected. Anyone who wanted to hurt you would have to go through me first. I failed to protect my first mate. I won't make that mistake again. The conviction in his voice made Freya's chest tighten. She thought about returning to Crescent Moon Pack, facing Xanthos every day, watching him choose another mate while she withered into nothing. She thought about the pitying looks, the whispered judgments, the way she'd become a cautionary tale that mothers told their daughters. Or she could take a leap of faith with this stranger who was somehow her mate, step into a life she'd never imagined, become someone entirely new. Okay, she heard herself say. I'll come with you. Caspian's entire expression transformed. It wasn't quite a smile, but the harsh lines of his face softened, and his silver eyes brightened with something that might have been relief. You won't regret this, Freya. I swear it. I already regret everything about today, Freya said with a bitter laugh. But somehow, this feels like the only choice that's actually mine. The journey to Shadowcrest Citadel took 2 hours on horseback, with Freya riding behind Caspian while his guards flanked them in wolf form. She'd never been this far from home, never seen landscape transform from dense forest to rolling hills to the stark mountain range where the royal castle stood. As they crested the final hill, Freya's breath caught in her throat. The castle was magnificent. Built from black stone that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, it rose from the mountainside like it had grown there naturally. Towers reached toward the sky, their peaks disappearing into low-hanging clouds. Massive walls surrounded the main structure, and Freya could see guards patrolling the battlements, their armor glinting in the fading sunlight. Welcome to your new home, Caspian said softly. The gates opened as they approached, guards saluting their king as he rode through. Freya felt the weight of dozens of eyes on her, curious and assessing. She must look like a disaster, still wearing her torn and dirted mating dress, her hair wild and her face streaked with dried tears. What must they think, seeing their king return with such a mess of a woman? Ignore them, Caspian murmured, as if reading her thoughts. By tomorrow, they'll be bowing to you. They dismounted in a massive courtyard where servants rushed forward to take the horse. A woman in elegant robes approached, her silver hair swept back in an intricate braid. She looked at Freya with sharp green eyes that missed nothing, taking in every detail of her appearance. "Brother," the woman said, her voice melodious but carrying an edge of curiosity. "You left this morning for a hunt. You've returned with a mate. Care to explain?" "Arya," Caspian said, and Freya heard genuine warmth in his voice for the first time. "Meet Freya Rivers. My true mate. Freya, this is my sister, Princess Arya. She's the only member of my family worth knowing." Arya's eyebrows rose. "Your true mate?" "Caspian, what?" She stopped, her eyes widening as she caught Freya's scent. Oh, I see. A severed bond and a new one, all in the same day." She turned her assessing gaze on Freya. "You've had quite the eventful day, haven't you?" "That's putting it mildly," Freya said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "I like her already," Arya announced, linking her arm through Freya's before Freya could protest. "She's got spine. Come on, let's get you cleaned up and into proper clothes. You look like you've been dragged through a thorn bush backward. No offense." "Some taken," Freya said, but she found herself smiling slightly despite everything. There was something refreshing about Arya's bluntness. As Arya led her away, Freya glanced back at Caspian. He was watching her with that intense silver gaze, and when their eyes met, he nodded once. A promise. A reassurance. Freya wasn't sure what she'd gotten herself into, but for the first time since Xanthos had rejected her, she felt something other than crushing despair. She felt possibility. The royal chambers Arya brought her to were larger than Freya's entire family home. A massive four-poster bed dominated one wall, draped in deep blue silk. Arched windows overlooked the mountains, and a fire crackled in a fireplace carved from white marble. Servants were already drawing a bath in an adjoining room, and Freya could smell lavender and honey in the steam. "This is too much," Freya whispered. "This is the Freya Queen's suite," Arya corrected. "And trust me, this is nothing compared to what you'll have once you're officially crowned. Now, talk while you bathe. I want to know everything. Who was stupid enough to reject you, and can I have permission to rip his throat out?" Despite herself, Freya laughed. It was a small, broken sound, but it was genuine. As she sank into the hot water and began to tell her story, she realized that maybe, just maybe, she could survive this. She'd been shattered today, broken into so many pieces she'd thought she could never be whole again. But sitting here with Caspian's sister, in this castle that might become her home, with a mate bond humming quietly in her chest like a promise of healing to come, Freya began to believe that broken things could be remade into something stronger. 3 days passed in a blur. Freya spent her time learning the layout of the castle, meeting key members of the court, and trying not to be overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of her new life. Caspian had been true to his word, giving her space to adjust while making it clear to everyone that she was under his protection. But Freya also noticed the whispers, the sideways glances, the barely concealed hostility from some of the noble ladies who clearly had their own designs on the throne. The worst was Lady Vivian Ashford, a stunning blonde with ice-blue eyes and a smile that never reached them. She'd cornered Freya in the library on the second day, her voice honey-sweet and dripping with poison. "So you're the king's new pet project," Vivian had said, circling Freya like a predator. "How unexpected. Tell me, what exactly are your qualifications for being queen? Other than being a desperate little Omega who threw herself at the first powerful male she met after being rejected." Freya had wanted to shrink away, to let the words cut her down the way Xanthos's had. But something in her had shifted. Maybe it was Arya's fierce friendship. Maybe it was the way Caspian looked at her like she was precious. Or maybe it was simply that she'd already survived the worst thing she could imagine, and Vivian's cruelty was nothing compared to that. "My qualification," Freya had said, meeting Vivian's eyes steadily, is that I'm the king's true mate. What's yours? Vivian's perfect smile had frozen. Watch yourself, little Omega. You may have fooled Caspian for now, but everyone here knows what you really are. A reject. A broken thing he picked up out of pity. The words had stung, but Freya hadn't let it show. She'd simply walked away, head high, even as Vivian's laughter followed her down the corridor. Chapter 4. Now, on the evening of her 4th day at Shadowcrest, Freya stood on her balcony watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and crimson. She'd been summoned to a formal dinner where Caspian would officially announce her as his intended queen. The thought made her stomach twist with anxiety. She'd never been comfortable being the center of attention, and now she'd be standing before the most powerful wolves in the kingdom while they judged every aspect of her. A knock at her door made her turn. Come in. Caspian entered, and Freya's breath caught. He was dressed formally in black leather and silver embroidery, his hair pulled back to reveal the sharp angles of his face. He looked every inch the powerful king, and Freya felt suddenly inadequate in her borrowed dress. You look terrified, he observed, closing the door behind him. I am terrified, Freya admitted. Caspian, I don't know how to be a queen. I'm just an Omega from a pack most people have never heard of. I don't know court politics or proper etiquette or how to navigate noble schemes. What if I embarrass you? Caspian crossed the room in 3 long strides, taking her hands in his. The touch sent warmth flooding through her, the mate bond singing with contentment. Freya, look at me. She raised her eyes to his. You could never embarrass me. Do you know what I see when I look at you? A broken reject. The words slipped out before she could stop them, Vivian's poison still lingering. I see strength, Caspian said fiercely. I see a woman who survived the worst betrayal imaginable and didn't let it destroy her. I see someone who faces her fears head-on, who speaks her mind even to a king, who has more courage in her little finger than most of these nobles have in their entire bodies. His hands tightened on hers. I see my equal. My mate. My queen. Freya felt tears prick her eyes. How do you do that? How do you make me feel valuable when everyone else sees me as defective? Because I know what it's like to be broken, Caspian said softly. When they killed my mate and child, I shattered. I became cruel, cold, everything people fear in a king. I thought I'd never feel anything again except rage and the weight of duty. He lifted one hand to cup her cheek, his thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. Then I found you by that stream, hurting and lost, and something in me woke up. You make me feel human again, Freya. You make me want to be better than the monster I've become. You're not a monster, Freya whispered. I've done monstrous things. His silver eyes held shadows of past sins. But with you, I want to be the man I was before grief twisted me. So no, you won't embarrass me tonight. You'll stand beside me, and together we'll show them all what true strength looks like. The dinner was held in the grand hall, an enormous room with vaulted ceilings and chandeliers that cast dancing light across marble floors. Long tables were arranged in a U-shape, with the high table at the head where Caspian and Freya would sit. As they entered, every eye in the room turned to them. Freya felt her wolf stir nervously, wanting to submit under so many dominant gazes, but she forced her spine straight and her chin up. Caspian's hand was warm and steady at the small of her back, guiding her to her seat. As they sat, Arya appeared at Freya's other side, giving her an encouraging wink. Breathe, she whispered. And if anyone gives you trouble, I'll handle it. The first course was served, and the hall filled with the murmur of conversation. Freya could feel the weight of speculation, could hear snippets of whispered gossip about her origins, her rejection, her supposed inadequacy. She focused on her plate, trying to ignore it all. Then Caspian stood, and the entire room fell silent. My lords and ladies, he began, his voice carrying easily through the hall. I've called you here tonight for an important announcement. Many of you have pressured me for years to take a queen, to produce heirs, to secure the bloodline. I've refused every match proposed to me because I swore I would never mate out of politics or duty alone. He turned to Freya, extending his hand. But the moon goddess had other plans. Freya stood, placing her hand in his, and Caspian pulled her close to his side. "This is Freya Rivers, my true mate. In 1 week's time, we will complete our bonding ceremony. She will be your Lunar Queen, and you will show her the same respect you show me. Any who disrespect her disrespect me directly." The room erupted. Some applauded, genuine in their happiness for their king. Others whispered furiously, shock and disbelief evident on their faces. And a few, like Vivian, looked murderous. An older nobleman with a grey beard stood. "Your Majesty, forgive me, but we must discuss the matter of heirs. The kingdom needs a compassionate Luna who will care for our people," Caspian interrupted, his voice hardening. "Not a breeding vessel. I've made my choice. Freya is my mate, my queen, and there will be no further discussion on the matter of heirs. Is that clear?" The nobleman paled and sat down quickly. "Yes, Your Majesty." Freya squeezed Caspian's hand, grateful for his fierce defense but also aware they'd just made enemies. She could see it in the faces around them, the nobles who'd hoped to secure their bloodlines through a royal marriage, the ladies who'd vied for the queen's crown. They'd all just watched their ambitions die, and they would make her pay for it. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur of forced smiles and veiled threats disguised as congratulations. By the time it ended, Freya's face hurt from maintaining her composure. As they left the hall, Arya caught up with them. "That went better than I expected," she said cheerfully. "Only 3 people looked like they wanted to murder you, Freya. That's actually pretty good." "Arya," Caspian said warningly. "What? I'm being encouraging." Arya looped her arm through Freya's. "Come on, let me walk you back to your chambers. Caspian has boring king things to do, and I want to gossip about all the scandalized faces." Caspian hesitated, clearly torn between duty and staying with Freya. Freya made the choice for him. "Go. I'll be fine with Arya." He nodded but pulled her close first, pressing his forehead to hers in an intimate gesture that made her heart race. "Sleep well, my queen. Tomorrow, we begin preparing for the ceremony." As he walked away, Arya sighed dramatically. "He's completely besotted with you. It's actually adorable. I haven't seen him look at anyone like that since." She stopped abruptly. "Since his first mate," Freya finished quietly. "It's okay. You can talk about her." They walked in silence for a moment before Arya spoke again. Her name was Alara. She was kind, gentle, everything good in the world. When she died, Caspian became hollow. He's ruled with an iron fist ever since, effective but cold. But with you, I see glimpses of the brother I lost 10 years ago. She squeezed Freya's arm. "Thank you for giving him back to me." Freya didn't know what to say to that, so she simply squeezed back. They'd almost reached her chambers when a figure stepped out of the shadows. "Xanthos." Freya froze, her heart lurching into her throat. He looked different, haggard and desperate in a way she'd never seen him. His amber eyes found hers, and she saw regret there. Too little, too late. "Freya, please," he said, his voice hoarse. "I need to talk to you." Arya stepped between them immediately, her posture aggressive. "You need to leave. Now. Before I call the guards and have you dragged out of here." "I'm part of the Crescent Moon delegation," Xanthos said, not taking his eyes off Freya. "We're here for trade negotiations. I have every right to be in the castle." "You have no right to harass the future Lunar Queen," Arya snapped. "It's okay," Freya heard herself say, surprised by how steady her voice was. "I'll talk to him. Alone." "Freya," Arya started. "Just for a moment. Please." Arya looked like she wanted to argue, but she nodded reluctantly. "I'll be right around the corner. Scream if you need me to rip his throat out." She shot Xanthos a venomous glare before disappearing down the corridor. Freya and Xanthos stood facing each other in the dim hallway. Part of her wanted to run, to avoid this confrontation entirely. But another part, the part that was growing stronger every day, wanted to face him. To show him what he'd thrown away. Chapter 5. "What do you want, Xanthos?" Freya asked, proud that her voice didn't shake. "I made a mistake," he said, taking a step toward her. Freya stepped back instinctively, and pain flashed across his face. "Freya, please. I need you to hear me out." That day, when Elder Thea told me about the diagnosis, I panicked. I let my father's voice in my head, telling me that a beta needs strong heirs to maintain his position. I let tradition and duty cloud what I knew in my heart. "And what did you know in your heart?" Freya asked, her voice cold. "That I love you," Xanthos said desperately. "That I've loved you since we were kids. That you're the only one I've ever wanted. Freya, I've been miserable without you. I can't sleep, can't eat, can't think about anything except how badly I hurt you and how much I want to fix it." Once, those words would have meant everything to Freya. She dreamed of Xanthos realizing his mistake, coming back to her, begging her forgiveness. But standing here now, looking at the man who destroyed her in front of their entire pack, she felt nothing but a distant sadness for the girl she'd been. "You don't love me, Xanthos," she said quietly. "You love the idea of me. The girl who was always there for you, who supported every decision you made, who never challenged you or made you uncomfortable. But that girl is gone. You killed her when you rejected me." "No, that's not true. Freya, we can fix this. There are healers in the Eastern Territories, magical treatments." "Stop." Freya's voice cracked like a whip. "Do you even hear yourself? You're still focused on fixing my supposed defect. You haven't asked how I'm doing, whether I've healed from the bond breaking, if I'm happy here. You just want to repair me like I'm a broken tool so I can serve the purpose you need." Xanthos flinched. "That's not fair." "Fair." Freya laughed, the sound harsh and brittle. "You want to talk about fair? Was it fair when you humiliated me in front of our entire pack? When you called me useless? When you shattered our bond and left me bleeding on the ground while everyone watched? Tell me, Xanthos, what part of that was fair? I know I hurt you. You destroyed me." Freya's composure finally cracked, years of repressed anger flooding out. "I gave you everything. My heart, my trust, my future. And you threw it all away the second I couldn't give you the one thing you decided was more important than me. Do you know what that does to a person? Do you have any idea what it feels like to be told your only value lies in your ability to breed?" Tears were streaming down Xanthos's face now. "I'm sorry. God, Freya, I'm so sorry. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you'll just give me another chance. We can petition the moon goddess to restore our bond. It's been done before." "I don't want our bond restored," Freya said, and realized with stunning clarity that she meant it. "Even if the moon goddess offered to fix everything, to erase what you did and give us back what we had, I would refuse. Because I deserve better than someone who treats me like I'm disposable." "And he doesn't?" Xanthos's grief was turning to anger now. "The Alpha King? Freya, everyone knows his reputation. He's ruthless, cold, he's killed." "He's never made me feel worthless," Freya interrupted. "In the few days I've known him, Caspian has treated me with more respect and care than you showed me in 10 years. He looks at me like I'm precious, Xanthos. Like I matter beyond what I can give him. Can you say the same?" Xanthos opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. "I can change. I can be what you need. I don't need you to change. I need you to leave me alone." Freya wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly exhausted. "Go home, Xanthos. Marry someone who can give you the heirs you want. Live your life. But leave me out of it. I'm building something new here, and I won't let you drag me back into the past." "Freya, please." She said leave. Caspian's voice cut through the hallway like a blade. Freya turned to see him striding toward them, his silver eyes blazing with barely contained fury. "You have 30 seconds to remove yourself from my mate's presence before I forget that you're here under diplomatic protection." Xanthos straightened, trying to look brave even though Freya could see him trembling. "I'm just trying to talk to her." "You're harassing her." Caspian moved between them, his body a protective wall. "I can smell her distress from 3 corridors away. Whatever you said to upset her will be the last conversation you ever have with her. Am I clear? You can't keep me from her. We have history." You have nothing, Caspian snarled, and Freya saw his eyes flash with his wolf's presence. She's mine now. My mate. My queen. And if you ever make her cry again, diplomatic immunity won't save you from me tearing out your spine. For a moment, Freya thought Xanthos might actually challenge him. But then his shoulders slumped in defeat. He looked past Caspian to Freya one last time. I hope he makes you happy. I hope you get everything you deserve. I will, Freya said softly. That's why I'm staying here. Xanthos turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing down the corridor until they faded entirely. Freya let out a shaky breath, her legs suddenly weak. Caspian caught her immediately, pulling her against his chest. Are you all right? He murmured into her hair. I am, Freya said, surprised to realize it was true. I actually am. Seeing him again, I thought it would hurt more. I thought I'd still have feelings for him. But all I felt was anger for what he did and gratitude that he did it. Caspian pulled back to look at her. Gratitude. If Xanthos hadn't rejected me, I never would have run into those woods. I never would have met you. Freya reached up to touch his face, tracing the sharp line of his jaw. I never would have found my real mate. So yes, I'm grateful. He set me free to find something better. The look in Caspian's eyes made Freya's breath catch. Raw emotion, vulnerability she'd never seen from him before. Freya, he said, his voice rough. I need to tell you something. These past few days having you here, getting to know you, watching you become stronger and more confident. He stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. I know we agreed to take this slowly. To give you time to heal. But I'm falling in love with you. Maybe I already have. And I need you to know that this isn't just about the mate bond or political convenience. It's about you. Who you are. Who you're becoming. Freya's heart was hammering so hard she was sure he could hear it. Caspian. You don't have to say it back, he continued quickly. I'm not asking for anything from you. I just wanted you to know. Because you deserve to know that someone sees you, really sees you, and loves what they see. Freya felt tears sliding down her cheeks, but they weren't tears of pain this time. They were tears of healing, of hope, of possibility. I'm not ready to say it back, she admitted. Not yet. The wound from Xanthos is still too fresh. But I want to be ready. I want to get to that place where I can love freely without fear. Then we'll take it at your pace, Caspian said, wiping her tears with his thumbs. However long it takes. I've waited 10 years to feel anything again. I can wait a little longer for you to be ready. The next morning, Freya woke to Arya bursting into her chambers with urgent news. We have a problem. Lady Vivian has been spreading rumors that you used dark magic to ensnare Caspian, that you're not his true mate but some kind of witch who's manipulated him. Freya sat up, her stomach sinking. What? That's insane. Insane but effective, Arya said grimly. She's got half the court whispering about it. Some of the more superstitious nobles are actually buying it. They're saying it explains why Caspian would choose a rejected Omega over someone of noble blood. What do? We fight back. Arya's smile was sharp and predatory. Starting with the Royal Moon Festival tomorrow night. It's the biggest social event of the season, and everyone who's anyone will be there. You're going to walk in on Caspian's arm, looking like every inch the queen you are, and show them all that you belong here. Freya spent the entire day preparing for the festival. Seamstresses fitted her for a gown of deep midnight blue that made her skin glow. Arya helped her practice the formal dances she'd need to know. And through it all, Freya felt a growing sense of determination. She was tired of being seen as weak, as defective, as less than. It was time to show everyone exactly who she was becoming. The festival was held in the castle's grand ballroom, transformed into a moonlit garden with silver decorations and ethereal lighting. Chapter 6. When Freya entered on Caspian's arm, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. She'd never felt more beautiful or more terrified. The gown hugged her curves before flowing to the floor in waves of silk that caught the light with every step. Arya had woven silver threads through her hair, making it shine like starlight. And on her neck, Caspian had placed a collar of diamonds and sapphires that marked her as his chosen queen. "You're trembling," Caspian murmured as they descended the grand staircase. "There are at least 300 people staring at us," Freya whispered back. "Let them stare. Let them see what a true queen looks like." He guided her onto the dance floor as the orchestra began to play. "Trust me." Freya placed her hand in his. "With my life." They moved together like they'd been dancing for years instead of days. Caspian led with confident grace, spinning Freya across the floor until the room blurred around them and all she could see was his silver eyes fixed on hers. For those few moments, nothing else existed. Not the whispers, not the judgment, not the conspiracy brewing in the shadows. The dance ended to scattered applause, and Caspian escorted her to the refreshment table where Arya was already holding court with a group of younger nobles. But before they could reach her, Vivian appeared, blocking their path. She was stunning in a gown of pure white that made her look like an ice queen. "Your Majesty," she said, curtsying to Caspian while completely ignoring Freya. "What a lovely festival. Though I must say, I'm surprised to see such a hasty bonding ceremony planned. Usually, royal matings require extensive vetting and approval from the High Council." "The High Council serves at my pleasure," Caspian said coldly. "Not the other way around." "Of course, Your Majesty." Vivian's smile was poison-sweet. "I simply worry about the kingdom's future. After all, we know so little about Lady Freya's background. Her family, her magical abilities, her intentions." "Are you implying something, Lady Vivian?" Freya asked, finding her voice. She was done being talked around and through. Vivian's eyes finally acknowledged her, and they were full of malice. "I'm simply saying that it's unusual for a nobody Omega to suddenly appear and capture the king's attention so completely. Some might wonder if there were unnatural forces at play. Some might wonder why a jealous noblewoman is spreading lies about her future queen," Freya shot back. "But I suppose when your own attempts to seduce the king failed, you had to find another way to stay relevant." Vivian's face flushed red. "How dare you? Enough." Caspian's voice cracked through the tension like thunder. "Lady Vivian, you've overstepped for the last time. You will apologize to my mate, or you will leave this festival and not return to court." The entire ballroom had gone silent, everyone watching the confrontation with rapt attention. Vivian looked around, realizing she'd miscalculated. She'd expected support, whispers of agreement, but instead she saw disapproval on the faces around her. Even her allies were backing away. Vivian started, but whatever she was about to say was cut off by screams from the terrace. The massive windows shattered inward as wolves crashed through the glass. Rogue wolves, their eyes wild and foam flecking their muzzles, tearing into the crowd with savage violence. Panic erupted as nobles fled in every direction. Caspian shifted instantly, his massive black wolf form emerging in a ripple of power, placing himself between Freya and the attackers. But Freya realized with horror that the rogues weren't attacking randomly. They were moving with purpose, driving straight toward her. Someone had sent them. Someone wanted her dead. "The defective Luna." One of the rogues snarled in the half-voice of a shifted wolf. "Kill the defective Luna. Remove the false queen." Freya backed away, her heart racing. She'd never been a fighter. As an Omega, she'd been taught to submit, to run, to let others protect her. But watching the rogues tear through innocent people to get to her, watching Caspian and his guards struggling to hold them back, something inside Freya snapped. Her wolf surged forward with a power she'd never felt before. Heat flooded through her body, and she felt her bones begin to shift. But this wasn't like the transformations she'd experienced before. This was agony and ecstasy combined, her body reshaping itself into something new. Something more. When Freya's wolf finally emerged, gasps echoed through the ballroom. She was massive, larger than any Omega had a right to be. And her fur was pure silver, gleaming like moonlight made solid. A silver wolf. The rarest of all werewolf forms, blessed directly by the moon goddess herself. Freya's wolf threw back her head and howled, a sound of such power and command that every wolf in the room, rogue or not, froze. The attacker's wild eyes cleared slightly, their corrupted instincts warring with the undeniable authority of her presence. She was Omega no longer. The moon goddess had marked her as something far greater. Freya leaped forward, her new form moving with instinctive grace. She took down the first rogue with precise efficiency, her jaws closing on its throat until it submitted. The second tried to attack her flank, but she was faster, spinning and using her momentum to throw it into a marble column. One by one, she subdued the attackers, not killing them but dominating them until they had no choice but to surrender. When the last rogue lay whimpering at her feet, Freya shifted back to human form. Someone threw a cloak around her shoulders as she stood there, breathing hard, her body still humming with power. The ballroom was destroyed, blood and broken glass everywhere, but the casualties were minimal thanks to her intervention. Caspian shifted back beside her, his eyes wide with awe and something that looked like pride. "A silver wolf," he breathed. "Freya, do you understand what this means?" "It means the moon goddess has spoken," Arya said, appearing with royal guards who were restraining the captured rogues. "No one can question Freya's right to be queen now. Silver wolves are chosen by the goddess herself to lead." "Who sent them?" Freya asked, her voice hoarse. "Who wanted me dead?" One of the guards stepped forward, holding a struggling figure. "Xanthos." He was battered and bleeding, fighting against the guard's hold. "We found him on the terrace, Your Majesty." He was signaling to the rogues, directing their attack. Freya's blood ran cold. "Xanthos? You tried to have me killed." "No." Xanthos's face was desperate, terrified. "Freya, you have to believe me. I wasn't," his voice broke. "It was my mother. And Lady Vivian. They planned this together. They said if you were gone, you could come back to me. They said they'd make it look like an accident, that the king would find comfort in someone of noble blood, and I could have you back." "You idiot," Freya whispered, horror and disgust warring in her chest. "You didn't want me back. You just couldn't stand that I'd found something better. That I'd moved on while you were stuck with your regrets. Please, Freya." "Take him away," Caspian ordered, his voice glacial. "He'll be tried for attempted regicide, along with his co-conspirators." As the guards dragged Xanthos away, his pleas fading down the corridor, Freya felt the last thread connecting her to her old life snap. She turned to find Vivian trying to slip away in the chaos, but Arya had already anticipated it. The princess had the noblewoman cornered, a triumphant smile on her face. "Going somewhere?" Arya asked sweetly. The next morning, Freya stood before the High Council for an emergency session. Vivian and Xanthos's mother sat in chains, while Xanthos himself was held in the dungeons awaiting trial. Elder Thea had been summoned and stood before the council with an ancient scroll. "I've made a discovery," the healer said, her voice shaking. "About Lady Freya's medical records. The infertility diagnosis was falsified. Xanthos's mother, who served as pack healer at Crescent Moon, deliberately altered the results to force her son to reject Freya." The council erupted in outraged whispers. Freya felt her knees weaken. "What? But that means—" "You were never infertile," Elder Thea confirmed. "The condition described in those records doesn't exist. It was entirely fabricated to manipulate Xanthos into rejecting you so he could pursue a politically advantageous match with the Alpha's daughter." Freya looked at Xanthos's mother, who had gone pale but showed no remorse. "You destroyed my life over politics." "I did what was necessary for my son's future," the woman said coldly. "He was meant for greatness, not to be tied to a common Omega with no connections, no power, no—" "Silence," Caspian commanded. "You manipulated a mate bond, one of the most sacred connections our kind possesses. You caused immeasurable suffering to further your own ambitions. The punishment for such crimes is exile and stripping of rank." "And Lady Vivian?" Arya asked, her voice hard. "She conspired to commit regicide. That carries a death sentence." Vivian finally broke, tears streaming down her face. "Please, I didn't want anyone to die. I just wanted her gone. I thought if she disappeared, Caspian would finally see me. Would choose me instead of some nobody." "I would never have chosen you," Caspian said flatly. Even if Freya had never existed, I would have ruled alone before I took someone like you as my queen. You're vain, cruel, and willing to murder for power. Take her away." As the conspirators were led out to face their sentences, Freya turned to Elder Thea. "I was never infertile. All of this pain, all of Xanthos's justifications, were based on a lie." "Yes, child. I'm so sorry. If I'd examined the records more carefully." "It doesn't matter now," Freya interrupted gently. "Because if Xanthos hadn't rejected me based on that lie, I never would have found my true mate. I never would have discovered my strength. In a twisted way, his mother's deception led me exactly where I was meant to be." Freya turned to Caspian, who had been watching her with those intense silver eyes. "Even knowing I'm not infertile, that I could potentially give you heirs, does that change anything?" Caspian closed the distance between them, taking her face in his hands. "It changes nothing. I told you before, I don't need heirs. But if the moon goddess chooses to bless us with children someday, I'll be grateful. Not because of bloodlines or legacy, but because they'll be ours. Created from this bond we've built. But Freya, if we never have children, if it's just you and me for the rest of our lives, that's more than enough. You're more than enough." Freya felt the last wall around her heart crumble. All the fear, all the doubt, all the pain from rejection. It fell away, leaving only certainty. "I love you," she said, the words coming easily now. "I love you, Caspian. Not because you're the Alpha King or because the moon goddess says we're mates. I love you because you saw me when I was broken and helped me find my strength. Because you value me for who I am, not what I can give you. Because with you, I finally understand what it means to be truly seen and loved." Caspian's answering smile was like the sun breaking through storm clouds. He kissed her then, deep and claiming, and Freya felt their mate bond snap fully into place. It was nothing like the bond she'd had with Xanthos, that shallow thing that had broken so easily. This was titanium and starlight, unbreakable and eternal. The bonding ceremony took place 3 days later under a full moon. But unlike her almost mating with Xanthos, this time Freya walked down the aisle with her head high, wearing her silver wolf form with pride. She shifted at the altar, standing before Caspian in a gown of moonlight silk, and spoke her vows with a steady voice that carried to every corner of the gathered crowd. "I, Freya Rivers, accept you, Caspian Shadowcrest, as my mate, my king, and my equal. I pledge my loyalty, my love, and my life to you, from this day until my last breath." Caspian's vows were equally powerful, his silver eyes never leaving hers. When they sealed the bond, Freya felt their souls intertwine in a way that transcended the physical. She felt his strength become hers, his pain and healing mirrored in her own heart. And she gave him the same, holding nothing back. The kingdom celebrated for 7 days. Freya threw herself into her new role as Lunar Queen, using her power to reform laws that had oppressed Omegas, establishing shelters for rejected mates, and creating programs to help wolves who'd been judged as defective or worthless. She made sure no one else would suffer the way she had. Xanthos was sentenced to 20 years of service in the Northern Territories, a harsh but survivable punishment that Caspian granted only because Freya asked for mercy. His mother was exiled, stripped of her healing title and forbidden from ever practicing again. Vivian faced execution, but Freya commuted it to permanent exile, unable to stomach the idea of death even for someone who tried to kill her. 6 months later, Freya stood on her balcony watching the sunrise, Caspian's arms wrapped around her from behind. She'd never imagined her life could be this full, this rich, this meaningful. The girl who'd been rejected and called defective had become a queen beloved by her people, a silver wolf blessed by the moon goddess, and most importantly, a woman who knew her own worth. "No regrets," Caspian murmured against her neck. Freya placed her hands over his, feeling the slight swell of her abdomen where new life had just begun to grow. The moon goddess's final gift, given not because it was required but because it was wanted. Not a single one. Being rejected was the best thing that ever happened to me. It freed me to find my real destiny. "Our destiny," Caspian corrected, his hand moving to cradle the tiny life they'd created together. Freya smiled, leaning back against her mate, her king, her everything. She'd been rejected for being infertile, discarded as worthless by someone who never deserved her. But the Alpha King had claimed her, not despite her supposed flaws but because he saw the truth. She wasn't defective. She was extraordinary. And she'd always been worthy of love. She just needed to find the right person to show her. If Freya's journey moved you, don't leave just yet. Hit that like button to show your love, and subscribe for more stories that remind you of your own power. Every view, every comment, keeps the stories alive.